Now, Eric Allen Bell is a filmmaker, blogger, and so on, who found himself receiving an education about Islam, free speech, censorship, and how things work in media these days. He's in Los Angeles, and let's have him tell his own story. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, this is one of those wonderful epiphanies, or reverse epiphanies, because, well, let's hand it over to you. You set out to do what? You wanted to make a film about the Islamic community. Is that the case?
Well, yeah, in the summer of 2010 in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is right in the middle of the American Bible Belt, the Islamic Center of Murfreesboro announced they'd be building a 53,000 square foot mega mosque in a town of about 100,000 people, very few of them Muslim. There was a sign announcing this which was defaced, and the words "not welcome" were spray painted across it, and I thought this would be a good subject for a documentary. So I shot probably about 300 hours of footage and really took the point of view that this is a peaceful community of law-abiding Muslims who are being victimized by a rather radical evangelical end times group. And I wrongly thought this was just a turf battle for who would have the home court advantage in terms of the reigning religion. So that's how I entered this journey. Along the way, some things came to light with regard to Islam, the truth about Islam that really threw me for a loop and caused me to have to really reassess my entire position, rethink everything.
Right.
Really.
So you went into this not as an activist, not with, well, if you did have an agenda, it was really that these innocent, innocuous people were not being treated fairly. So what happened to change your mind?
I took around the time of the Arab Spring, I took a cab, and the cab driver was a Coptic Christian from Egypt. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Isn't this wonderful? Hosni Mubarak is worth $70 billion, and he's going to fall, and this will be so great for Egypt." And he explained to me he was a Coptic Christian, and he was scared to death that the Muslims are going to take over, and he's worried for the lives and safety of his parents and his sisters. And that really hit me, and I started to pay attention to the news coming out of the Islamic world and follow what was happening with the Islamist winter, looking at Egypt, Tunisia, other countries starting to go the way of possibly Iran 1979. So I really started to take a deeper look at the truth about Islam, and that just kind of turned my whole worldview upside down.
Right. So how did the Muslim community that you were covering in the States and media in general react when you seemed to change your position?
Well, I don't know how the Muslim communities reacted. A few of them have written me letters saying that they were just disappointed. Most of the people I've heard from in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, were pretty delighted with my change of position. I've received God knows how many emails since I had written an article for David Horowitz for Front Page Magazine called The High Price of Telling the Truth About Islam. And so that's where I kind of announced my changed worldview on this matter.
Well, what was the high price?
Well, I had written a handful of articles for michaelmoore.com, a couple for commondreams.org, and 109 blogs for the Daily Kos, which is a very popular liberal blog. Gets about 1 million visitors a day. Mm-hmm. And after my backers in the film, we had a disagreement. I wanted to change the direction of the movie to be really fair, right, and say, let's take a really critical look at Islam also. And they said, not with our money, you don't. This movie has to be about radical evangelicals in America and the danger at home, the Taliban at home. Yeah. So I walked away from that deal. I walked away from the money and decided I wasn't going to make a movie with this group. And I wrote an article about some of my concerns regarding Islam on the Daily Kos. The first one was called RadicalIslam.com and Loonwatch.com and Radical Islam. Mm-hmm. The consequence was that Loonwatch.com took my picture and my name and called me the Loon at Large, and this just went on to Islamic sites all over the world with an article that I think translated in the way a jihadist would think would say, insulting Islam, enemy of Allah. Mm. So it was at that point that I became very determined to expose loonwatch.com and the Council on Islamic American Relations and their connection to the Muslim Brotherhood as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation.
Right.
And so I wrote a total of 3 articles, and then, of course, was fired from Daily Kos.
Now, this is very interesting because there are 2 aspects to this. One is the direct threat or implied threat from Islamic groups, because to say it's not so bad because you're not a Muslim, but for anyone to insult the Prophet and attack Islam, that can be a death threat, often is, and often carried out.
Sure.
But also the way that non-Muslim media approach this. We have this in Canada too, that even though there may be honor killings and terrorist attacks planned, it's somehow the Christians who are really the bad guys, the ones we have to watch out for. And that was the underlying theme and flavor of when this mosque, and other mosques, by the way, particularly in New York, were covered. It was the Christians who were the bad guys.
Well, and I have to admit, my own indoctrination prior to this awakening, as the blinders came off, I really saw it that way too. I have to say that I really believed that narrative, that this was just about religion, this was some kind of far-right agenda to manufacture consent for the bombing of oil-rich Islamic countries and to gain an upper hand, you know, among the evangelical community. So, you know, I was kind of finding the conclusions that I was looking for.
Right. Have any members of, I don't want to use the term mainstream media, but those people, and they're often just, with all due respect, useful idiots. They don't mean any harm, they just don't know any better. But if any of those people come to you and said, you know what, you're right, we are sort of given a line, and we are told to think in a certain way, any support for you?
Yeah, actually, mostly not support, but surprisingly, yes. It's been anywhere from support to, I'm not sure where you're going with this, but I've agreed with other things you've written, and I'm doing my own homework. But yeah, some minds have been changed, actually.
Well, that's good. I know how difficult it can be. I mean, many of us at this station, we're pretty big and tough, but the threats are constant, and also just the marginalizing and the campaigns that somehow there's something wrong with you if you disagree. So don't back down. We're with you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.